You're listening to Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance, Protecting Texas Churches. The show that gives pastors and church leaders the clarity they need to protect their people, property, and ministry.
Welcome back to Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance, Protecting Texas Churches. I'm your host, Ron Wadley with Insurance for Texans. We help church leaders protect their people and property with wisdom and clarity. Today we are talking about insurance exclusions and how they catch churches off guard. Pastor Steve loves his church in Midland. He finds joy in walking with people through hard seasons, praying with them, and listening when life feels heavy. That's part of the calling. One afternoon, a church member reached out asking for help. They were struggling emotionally and needed someone to talk to. Steve didn't hesitate. He met with them, listened carefully, offered guidance, and prayed with them. Months later, Steve opened an envelope that caused his heart to beat harder. The church had been named in a lawsuit. The same person that he had counseled months ago was now claiming emotional harm resulted from that conversation. This church member was holding both the church and Steve personally responsible for this harm. After he finished reading the notice, Steve did what most pastors would do. He called the insurance company, confident that the church's liability coverage would step in. But that was not the case. Steve learned the hard truth that general liability insurance didn't cover this situation. Counseling was excluded from the policy, and unfortunately, the church did not have any professional liability coverage in place. The policy, he thought, protected his work at the church stopped short right where ministry actually happened. Steve wasn't reckless. He wasn't careless. He just didn't know what was buried in the fine print of his church's insurance policy. And that's where many Texas churches find themselves today. Insurance policies are full of exclusions that don't show up on the declarations page. They don't get discussed at renewal meetings. Some may even seem minor until the moment you need coverage and discover it isn't there. Pastoral counseling is one of the most common gaps. General liability is designed for slip and fall injuries and property damage. It was never meant to protect conversations, advice, or spiritual guidance. When a claim alleges emotional harm, stress, or mental anguish, the policy often steps aside completely. Without professional liability coverage, both the church and the pastor can be left standing alone, responsible for defense costs and settlements. As Steve reviewed his policy more closely, he discovered something else that surprised him. Sexual abuse and molestation claims were excluded too. He had assumed that kind of protection was also automatically included, but it wasn't. Any church working with minors carries a risk of receiving an abuse allegation, whether they want to think about it or not. One claim of abuse can create massive legal expenses, reputational damage, and long-term consequences that reach far beyond the courtroom. That's why we recommend adding sexual abuse and molestation coverage to your church's insurance package. Then Steve noticed another limitation that hit close to home in West Texas. Hail coverage on their property policy had been greatly reduced in their last insurance renewal. This reduction also came with higher deductibles and restrictions on roof damage. These limits would leave the church paying a significant portion out of pocket after a major storm. Large roofs, playgrounds, fencing, signs, and auxiliary buildings are expensive to repair. Without understanding how exclusions on these items work, churches can budget for premiums and still be unprepared to pay for losses. None of these gaps were malicious. They weren't hidden out of spite. They were simply part of the policy's design due to a lack of understanding of how churches actually operate. This is why working with a church insurance specialist matters. When Steve sat down with an experienced church insurance agent at Insurance for Texans, the conversation changed. Instead of just talking about price, they talked about ministry, counseling, volunteers, property exposure, storm risk, real life. Coverage was added where it mattered. Gaps were closed, and the policy finally reflected what the church actually does, not just what looks good on paper. This is what True Texas Church Insurance is built to do. We don't sell generic policies. If you haven't reviewed your policy beyond the premium and deductible, now is the time. Connect with our church insurance team at insurancefortexans.com. And if you would like a broader look at church insurance in general, get a free copy of our book, The Promise of Certainty, at thepromiseofcertainty.com. I'm Ron Wadley, and this has been Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance Protecting Texas Churches. Until next time, remember, a church insurance agent will interpret the fine print for you.
Thanks for listening to Faith, Stewardship, and Insurance. Until next time, remember, insurance isn't just about policies. It's about safeguarding the mission God has called you to lead.